I felt that we needed to look more to this rich and very diverse history and start to recreate some of that. But in order to do that, we needed to decide which raw material we would start with. And I felt that if we were going to spend the hours and the months weaving these pieces, we needed to do it in silk. So we went to rural farmers who had a silk tradition in sericulture, and then started planting mulberry plantations. So this involved district travel, going to the districts, working with provincial authorities, training, finding women who were interested to do this, who had a history of it or who had a grandmother that knew what to do, in order to actually secure the raw material. So we work in a variety of different districts in Laos, where we raise most of our silk. And now our business has grown a little bit bigger that we actually have to use other silk. But when we started, our only source of silk was our local supply, because we were really this very close country. We didn't have access to imports. Rearing the silk was a family activity. Everyone was involved, from the grandmother to the kids. It was real. My strategy was to do as much processing in the village as possible. And the reason for that was to give as much value added to the raw material in the village so that the women could have as much income as possible. So we would twist the silk, and we have two varieties of silk in Laos. We have a yellow and a white. And then that would then become a thread, which we would twist and ply into a thread that we would then start the weaving process. So all of this was an effort at rural development or poverty reduction, or whatever you'd like to call it. It's had so many names in the 30 years of professionalism that I've had working in the UN and in my own business. But the goal was to empower women to use locally available raw materials to create something that could be integrated into a global economy in a win-win situation. The way in which we create pattern is pretty complex, but it works like a jacquard loom in a computer, and that is a mesh where we are then creating a pattern. It's all done by hand, so with a wooden sword, and patterning can take, to create, we have a few pieces. I did not bring a lot of the complex brocades, but we have some extraordinary pieces, and the minimum weaving time for something like that would be about 6 weeks. And there's a range between $95 and $250 of those on the far side there. But it's all inlaid by hand. And here you can see, this is Dalavon, one of our best weavers, and she's the daughter of one of the original 5. And she now has earned a living for herself and her family. And the threads are inlaid, one thread at a time, one layer at a time. So it's actually, in layman's words, it's a brocade, but it's a double layer fabric, and we weave 1 row of pattern and 1 row of design. We weave a lot of custom work. Here you can see the patterning is done from the back side. So all of these fabrics, which are 100% silk, are all employing traditional skills, but then modifying the design so that they would be contemporary. We carve our own shuttles, we use the bamboo to create everything. So over the years, Laos has really started to open up, and we can get plastic bags everywhere, and you can get materials, but I'm still sort of stuck in the 1990s where I use everything natural. We have almost no footprint, ecological footprint, and it just seems to make sense that that's the way to continue to go. One of the techniques that is a traditional technique of the region that we feature is ikat, which is it's a resist dye process where we tie it off and then we dye it. And this is truly a magical technique. And then that thread is woven. It's all mathematically calculated and then becomes a fabric. And we have some of the ikats here today. And they're all either one of a kind or a limited edition. So I'll do a design, I'll create it, we'll draw it. I have my ikat supervisor, who is Simone, who's been with us since she was 19. She's now 39, she's gonna be 40 years old this year. And she's had an entire career where she was able to use her skill as a weaver to be gainfully employed, to be modern, and we've basically created a middle-class group of women in Laos. So these are complex ikats. We do all sorts. We do a lot of, as I mentioned, custom work, trying to get the color just right, which is never just right, because color is a very complex subject. There you can see Voy, and that's Voy, one of our weavers that's, again, one of our original 5, who's still with us. And they have the most versatile skill sets because they've been with me the longest, so they're able to do each of these different techniques. The bobbins all have to be kept in order when you weave ikat, and so we string them on a thread, and as they weave, then these bobbins magically become fabric. So it's really about preserving the tradition, maintaining the skill that they inherited from their grandmother, and then being able to work in that skill commercially. And the design is infinite because we can, it's like a painting. We can put anything on that design. And here are just some of the different ikats that we've done. We do tapestry weave, which is similar to Native American. And we do tapestry with inlays in golds and silver.